Hello, everyone. Welcome to another teaching moment and live Q&A with myself, Mark Holthe, and my fearless companion here, Alicia Backman-Bahari. How are you doing, Alicia?
I'm doing well. I am grateful for many things, and one of them is a little bit of blue sky today. I don't know about you, Mark, but there's been a lot of smoke, and I feel for a lot of people who are having to deal with, things on fire and of course downwind. Everybody who has all this brown skies and red suns and moons. It's very discombobulating. So a little bit
Yeah,
of blue sky today. I'm glad for that.
yeah. We can look up and we see there's no snow, so that's a positive here in Alberta. And to have a few more days of summer is exactly what the doctor ordered. So it's a little bit smoky, hoping it's going to pass through. But at the end of the day, I'll take what we've got as long as it's not snow. Now, the question of today, we choose these from the viewers who watch this and who then decide, hey, can you answer my question? Well, we've really focused on trying to do one question right at the beginning that is going to be, basically a super, super popular one. And so the question that we have today is under express entry, which that's what everybody's been voting for. Does my job title need to match my NOC? So
Yeah.
maybe you can touch on this a little bit, Alicia. So what's the answer? Does it need to match?
Well, the answer is maybe, but probably not if you can show everything else. So that's the answer in a nutshell. But I'm going to go through why that's the answer and what people do need to make sure that they are meeting. And so the answer is buried in the ministerial instructions regarding express entries. So we can maybe take our viewers and listeners there to go to the ministerial instructions. And if you scroll down to section 15, so it'll be 15 sub 4 that's talking about work experience, and this is for Canadian work experience. So for the requirements for work experience, in order to get points for Canadian work experience, a foreign national has to specify the 4-digit NOC code. And we expect, of course, that the ministerial instructions will change as of November 16th when they're going to be updating to the new 2021 tier system. So instead of having a 4-digit NOC code, it's going to be moving to a 5-digit NOC code under the National Occupation Classification Codes in the 2021 tier version. But currently, this is what the ministerial instructions say. You've got to pick your 4-digit NOC code, and then this is the really important part. You have to have performed the actions described in the lead statement for that occupation. And I don't know about you, Mark, but a lot of people, when I'm doing a consult with them, when they've hired us on to help review their express entry application in excruciating detail, a lot of people miss the fact that the NOC is not just the bulleted main duties, it's also this lead statement. And people aren't even really sure what a lead statement is. But for
Let's
example,
pull
if
one
you
up
go to the
here.
NOC,
Yeah,
yeah,
let's pull one up.
let's
I don't know. Let's go 1122. Let's go a management consultant just for fun.
sure. So when Mark pulls that up and it's going to bring up the 1122 actual NOC description,
I hope
maybe it
it
will.
was. It had big plans. It's up here on top. It's spinning up here thinking. Maybe
Oh no.
everybody's trying to search Knox. We'll leave that. We'll come back to that in a second.
So what it is when you do have a NOC and it's the description is actually pulled up, you've picked one specifically and the website loads, then it's going to have kind of an opening paragraph. It's going to be that main descriptor paragraph that kind of talks in general about what kind of job this is in what kind of sector and which kind of companies normally hire these individuals. That's the lead statement. And a lot of times people forget to
Hmm.
add something about the lead statement. So it's always good to situate the immigration officers so that they know, okay, well, how do you show that you have actually performed the actions described in the lead statement and as well as a substantial number of the main duties including all essential duties as set out. And so this is now where you look at the bullet points. This is where you look at the main duties and a substantial number. They don't describe exactly how many a substantial number is, but it's going to be well over 50%. And to be safe, we always say 75%. So a substantial number of the main duties and all the essential duties. And so this is another thing where some of those NOC code bullet points will have things like may. And if they have a bullet point that starts with may, that is not one that's a mandatory duty. So keep in mind that when you're looking at your national occupation classification codes, you really need to be meeting the main lead statement, so the overall lead statement for that occupation, as well as substantial number of the main duties, all essential duties. It doesn't say anything in here about job title. But it is important that when you're looking at your employer records, that your job title lines up with something that's logically correlated to the lead statement and the majority of the main duties. And so when you look at the NOC codes, they do have the ability to give example job titles. So some of them have a short form example job title, and you can expand that list to look at longer form job titles. If your job title is somewhere along the lines of something that reasonably fits there, then most of the time you can explain that in your letters of explanation about why your job title is what it is.
Yes. And just for our viewers as well, we'll just pull up the foreign work experience. So this works the same for Canadian and foreign. So this is section 25. And you slide down here, you'll see that it's the same basic paragraph. So whether it's Canadian
25
or foreign,
sub 2.
Yeah, principles apply the same. And the NOC, I think they just know we're trying to show people, oh, and it just is not loading up. Let's try one more time. So what we'll do is let's search by a job title. What do you think, Alicia? Let's pick something.
Maybe do software engineers.
Okay, let's go software engineer and let's see if it will cooperate with us. Oh, we're getting closer. Okay. So there's 2173. So let's open this one up. Oh, now it's willing to work
there
with us. Go. Okay.
All right. So just to recap, what Mark is highlighting here is the lead statement. And so a lot of people miss this. They don't have anything in their job letters or descriptions that talk about, well, the fact that software engineers research, design, evaluate, integrate, maintain software applications, technical environments, operating systems, embedded software. So there's nothing usually about what they do in an overarching sense, and that's where people usually miss the mark. So make sure that you add something here, and then add something about what kind of company it is. So in the lead statement, it says they're employed in IT consulting firms, IT research and development firms, IT units throughout the private and public sector. So have something about what kind of company has hired you and how long it's been in operation, what the general clientele are. So that's something that's important to distinguish between being self-employed versus being employed with an actual employer of record. So that's the lead statement. And then if you scroll down, Mark, you'll be able to see the example titles. And so this is where you have example job titles, but you can actually expand upon that example job title list, and it'll give you a bigger list of job titles that still fall within the same NOC. And if you can, maybe your company calls you something a little bit different, especially in IT and software development and things like that. I've noticed a lot of firms have fairly unique names that may not be on this list. But if it logically flows and you can make an argument for it, put that in your letter of explanation. If the company is willing to explain how they've come to their job title, then that's good too. But if you go back and scroll down to the main duties now for the software engineers, then you'll see that we've got a number of bullet points, and we always recommend that people count those bullet points and make sure that you're meeting at least 75% of these mandatory bullet points. If you look down at that last bullet point, you'll notice that it starts with the word may. And so that's optional. You may lead and coordinate teams of IT professionals, but that's not one of the mandatory main duties. So if you exclude that bullet point, take a look at the other ones, make sure that you're meeting 75% of the other ones. You can do more. You can talk or speak about or have your employer write about what other types of analogous job duties that you've done as a software engineer, and we would recommend that you do that if that's part of your work on a daily basis, but just make sure you don't have less than 75% of the mandatory main duties and some sort of statement about the lead statement being satisfied.
Yeah. And one thing I'll point out too for our viewers is that your job is to convince the officers that you have chosen the correct NOC. And this is one of the areas where we see a lot of express entry applications getting rejected. So as immigration lawyers, we do everything that we can to try to give you tools and resources to help you sort this out. And so one thing I want to just give people a sneak peek, which is typically reserved for our course applicants themselves. And I guess that's something I can point out as well, is that on Monday, we have, just as a little reminder, let me pull this one away. The Express Entry course, the masterclass, will run September the 19th to the 22nd. So there's a link in the description below. That card is open. I recommend that you slide over and subscribe to that. But if we go back here, I'm going to just switch this and see if I can pull up a little tool that we share with our clients. And this tool, a little sneak peek here, is called our NOC selection tool. So I'll just expand it just a little bit more here. So this NOC selection tool that we have here is designed to help our clients and those who subscribe to the course to be able to understand what they can do to try to explain to the officer why they've chosen the right NOC. And the letter itself, the reference letter itself, is all that you really have to prove to the officers. And so we don't just rely on that alone, but in our packages, and there's an explanation here we give to our clients, but you can see we actually create a table. And what do we have here? We have the lead statement covered, and then we have the duties from the reference letter, and then the NOC main duties, and then the reference letter duties that are associated with it. And we work through all of this, and we don't just end with that. We explain why we feel it fits, and then we include a copy of the reference letter. We even include a copy of the NOC itself for the officers as a further reference point for them to go off of. So that is a tool that we've created for our clients, that when you subscribe to the Express Entry course, you have the ability to access that, as well as a host of other tools. So those of you who are looking at applying through Express Entry, and those of you who are drawn in the most recent draw, which we'll talk about in a little bit, those tools are available for you. So any other thoughts, Alicia, on this topic that we have right now?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is that your job title and the National Occupation Classification Code should have some logical correlation, right? So if you have a totally different job title and it's not at all lining up with the NOC, then you will want to discuss and address that. Or you may want to talk to your employer about, well, if they have some very unique or unusual way of naming their jobs, then maybe they want to discuss that right in that employment letter itself.
Yeah, exactly. And let's face it, you guys, if you say that your NOC code is astrophysicist and your title is food service supervisor, yeah, that's probably going to be an issue. But there's lots of variations. And if you can't find your title exactly on the NOC, it's not the end of the world. But like Alicia said, you just have to make sure that you're making the officer's job as easy as possible. That is what we do. All right. Okay. Well, that was great. Thanks, Alicia. Okay. So now, what have we had going on in the wonderful world of immigration? What has been the latest developments? Let's pull up the website here, and let's just take a quick peek, because last I checked, I think there might have been one of these things right here that occurred yesterday once again. So
good news. Yeah, good news. There was the largest Express Entry round of invitation that we've had for, I guess, years, in terms of an all program or no program specified draw. So 3,250 people got an invitation to apply yesterday, and the minimum CRS was 510. So that's down 6 CRS points from the draw 2 weeks ago. So yes, we are kind of creeping our way a little bit lower in the 500s. We're not down to the 400s yet by any means, but at least it was a larger scoop of applicants, right? So we started off in July with only 1,500 people being invited, and that slowly crept higher. So that's good news. There is more movement happening right now.
Yeah. And as you can see, everyone, the closer we get to 500, the slower the drop, the smaller the drop is in CRS score. So why is that? If we jump back here to what the pool looked like on September the 12th, you can see here right immediately before this round of invitations where they pulled out those 3,250, there were a lot of people still in the 501 to 600. Now we know that the higher numbers were flushed out in previous draws. Sure, there could have been a few others that came in. Some of these might have been PNP applicants, but it's possible to hit over 600 if you're an executive of a company with an extra 200 points as well. And there might be some other factors that combine to, push you up above 600. But generally speaking, there is a large volume, and they don't break down the distinction between 500 to 600, this range. They don't separate it out like they do below 500. So we know 490 to 500 that there's, 6,000 here. We know 481 to 490, there's a ton. So in here, roughly half of these people were pulled out. And so, there's going to be others that are going to come in here, but we can expect that generally speaking, there's going to probably be one more draw at the very least that is going to be over 500. And it may take a couple more before it has the potential of dipping down into the sub 500 range. And, with what they pulled out, 3,250, it's definitely going to, pull people closer if they do another no program specified in 2 weeks. But those of you who are hovering right around there, hang in there, because it's, there's only so many people that are going to be able to get back in for a variety of reasons. So hang in there, and we will see how this unfolds in the coming days. But like I said before, those of you who have received the invitation to apply, I can tell you right now that subscribing to the course will give you right now everything that you need to avoid all of those common problems that we run into. And my goodness, Alicia, I wish we could share with the world what we see in our consultations, because when do people reach out to us? It's when they've got problems, and either the application has been rejected. I just saw a message that was on one of my LinkedIn posts from someone who had questioned when I had said the employment requirements for the NOC, and I'm just going to pull this over and just carry through this. Lots of people in my last video, and it will be released as a separate standalone instruction, I indicated that the main duties, yes, are important, but when you're counting foreign work experience, the employment requirements are not. And so someone showed me a letter from IRCC, and I can't remember exactly where it was a procedural fairness letter where they said, we don't think that you've met the requirements because we have questions about the employment requirements and whether you actually have the requirements for the NOC. So it was something that was completely wrong in law. So the officer had in the procedural fairness letter said, please show us why you think you've meet the work permit the NOC requirements. You've met the NOC, and they were referring to the employment requirements, which is completely wrong in law. And so, these people, you read stuff online, you watch the WhatsApp groups, and, there's this kind of mass kind of, I'm trying to think of the term. Basically, it's like crowdsourcing of information. And so this person's like, look at this, Mark is wrong, because they actually had this issue, and they mentioned that, I hadn't met the employment requirements, and Mark said you didn't have to. So then I had the privilege and opportunity to go in and actually pull out the legislation and the actual section where it says it's not to be included. But people face this all the time, Alicia. Officers make wrong decisions. And if you are, if you don't understand that or really understand the law, then people just accept it, and they can lose out on opportunities through no fault of their own. So definitely the course and the masterclass, which is 1 hour every evening from Monday through Thursday of next week, I will be live where you can literally ask me anything, the people that have subscribed to the course. So it's pretty simple to do that. Right in the YouTube, our feed in the description is the link where you can access it. So if you go into, I'm just going to open it up and just show people, all you have to do is just scroll down to the bottom, and I will stop playing that. You just scroll down into the description here, and you'll see that you can submit your question as our featured question for next week. But also you can book a consult, and then in this part right through here, you can see this is where the Express Entry course and masterclass. And all you need to do is just click on that link, and it will take you right to the place where you can register and really see all the information, explanation on how it works. So that is me driving that ship. All right. Whew, okay. So there we go. Good times. I also want to say something. Whenever bad things happen in the office, Alicia, I always feel compelled to share them with people. So I don't know why. Sometimes people will only share the good things, and they'll give this impression that they're perfect. They never make a mistake, that their lives are all perfect. The classic picture of someone showing this wonderful neatly kept house and this little narrow video, and then they back it up and show how the whole house is a disaster, right? But you can only see the narrow little picture that they want you to see. Well, sometimes when it goes to, online stuff, that's what we see. People are only sharing the very, very good things. Well, this morning I had the worst experience in my life, I swear. So I had reached out to a client. Well, let me backtrack. I used to have a gold plan where I would fully represent people through my employer portal. This particular client, they decided to do it through their own, and the correspondence and everything, they wanted it to go to them. And so that's how we approached it. When they received correspondence from immigration, they'd reach out and then I'd provide assistance. And this has been going on for a long time. Well, back in June, without me noticing, immigration had sent their passport request directly to my email address. I had included a use of representative form with their application because that's the practice I followed back then. But for some reason, IRCC pulled up my email from the use of representative form, even though in the EAPR, the client's email address and all contact address, mailing, everything was to the client. And so, but it was my fault. I missed it. And I just feel absolutely terrible because there's 30 days to respond. And so we're now frantically trying to put things together to get the passport sent off, and these things happen. And as an immigration lawyer, I want to be perfect. I don't want ever to have any mistakes. And sure, I could say, well, how was I supposed to know, right? Like I wasn't supposed to receive that correspondence, but regardless, I missed it. And so, full responsibility. There's definitely no, these things happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if she could give me a negative star on our Google reviews. Maybe she would give me that. But these are the challenges that we deal with. And that's why, without any reservation, I love our new process, Alicia. I love the way we do our collaborative reviews because the client maintains control of their own application. Any correspondence that comes through goes directly to them, and there's no confusion or chance of this even happening. And then we get to work directly with the clients in every way, helping them to file their applications, making sure that there's nothing missing from it and that it is 100% accurate. And then, and with two heads, they're always better than one, with us and the client looking at it and submitting it together. And then knowing that all correspondence will go to the client. And if there is any issues, we can absolutely be there to support them in every way. But yeah, it's really kind of shaken me, I'll be honest, for today, because it's, you absolutely hate for those things to happen. And it's, it was 30 days from June. So I'm just crossing my fingers that IRCC will allow this to go forward, and the VFS office isn't going to somehow, block it and say, oh, well, no, this is 30 days. You can't submit it. You're beyond that 30-day period. So of course, web forms and everything have been sent, and yeah.
It is important to note that, if you have changed the representative, right? If even initially that use of rep was on, or if somebody used a consultant, for example, and had a use of rep, and if they subsequently change and they say, no, I don't want correspondence to go to my rep, I want it to come directly to me, immigration is supposed to honor that, right? They are supposed to review it and make sure that they are now sending the correspondence properly to the individual rather than to the representative. So that also is a problem in immigration, in not making sure to update their files to know who to send the information to. And, let's say you had a consultant and then you wanted to move on and get that correspondence yourself. If immigration's still sending your personal private information directly to somebody who's not authorized to represent you anymore, technically that's a breach of privacy as well. So it's a problem from immigration standpoint, but for sure it's a problem for the client. Hopefully they can raise that with immigration and say, look, it should have come directly to me, and that was who was authorized in my most recent correspondence to you. So I would hope that they would make it right. But it does raise a good point that, when we do our new process, we are still reviewing absolutely everything collaboratively with our clients. We're not ghosting files. So we're not hiding the fact that we're immigration lawyers, that people are paying us to review their applications. What we do instead of a use of representative is what we call an advice for consideration letter. So under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, there are only certain individuals who are authorized to charge people a fee in order to be able to get immigration legal review. And we immigration lawyers are one of those authorized groups. And so we provide our law society numbers, our address, our phone numbers, our contact information as required under IRPA, and that's something that people include as part of their application. However, they maintain control of their application. So we're not hiding the fact that we've reviewed it. We're providing all the information properly to immigration.
Yep.
It's just that clients maintain control. They have everything. They get the correspondence. That way, there shouldn't be any sort of mix-ups in terms of correspondence going forward.
Joys. And the interesting thing for my situation is that I never was the point of contact on this.
Right.
It was always the client. And so,
Yeah.
I feel absolutely terrible for the clients, and rightly so. They were very, very upset, and I don't blame them in any way. And I'm sure that every WhatsApp group they're associated with are now going to hear that Mark has failed them in their application. And I can tell you guys, we, at least within Holthe Immigration Law, we do not take this lightly. You know, when these things happen, even though there might be some rationale or some way of justifying, well, it's not my fault. Well, the reality is it doesn't matter. Anything that harms our clients, you know, we take it just as badly as our clients do. You know, we feel terrible. Our names are on those applications as much as our clients. And you know, the fortunate thing, Alicia, is that, you know, this was a file that had been submitted when I was in my previous firm. It's been going on that long. And I've never, ever in my entire history of practice ever had this happen before. But it doesn't change that fact for the client. The client's like, well, I don't care, right? It happened to me. And so I'm just hoping that we can work through this. And I'll tell you, I will be fighting this tooth and nail if there's any pushback from IRCC. But anyways, so it's kind of a little bit of a downer, but I wanted to be transparent and let people realize that, we are absolutely not perfect. We do everything that we can to try to mitigate those things. And if it happens, we take full responsibility and we move forward and do what we can to try to correct things. But, immigration is extremely volatile. And even when we have very clear paths forward, officers at times can do things wrong. And, they can refuse applications when they shouldn't. They can, allege grounds of refusal that don't exist. So there's a whole bunch of things there. So, all right, those faithful people that have been tuning in and watching, let's now shift over and get to some questions. We've got a few people that have tuned in and given us some shout outs. We always like to hear where you guys are listening from. Max says hello, and Danielle is from Pakistan. Hello, Danielle. Ankit is tuning in, and Yatif is there. We've got Ashutosh, and Ami is, maybe you can translate that. I think it's, hey, how's it going, Mark and Alicia?
Good morning. Yeah.
Good morning. Okay. Hello. Good morning. Maybe. How's that sound? All right. And then Priscilla, good to see you. We've got Kellyanne is tuning in from Trinidad and Tobago. Hello, Kellyanne. All right. So if you do have a question, remember, put a Q in front of it, and then we'll know that that is a question and not just you guys communicating amongst yourselves during the live feed, which happens sometimes. All right. So first question, this one's from Harpreet. So Harpreet says, I have a PR non-express entry application in process. So I'm assuming it's probably a PNP. I got a file number and had to call IRCC for ADR, but there's no space to upload the documents. Okay. I had to call IRCC for an additional document request, but there's no space to upload the documents in GC Key. Any other way to send the documents except web form? I've seen this, Alicia. Mm-hmm. I've seen where in the letter it says upload it through your IRCC secure account, and then there's no place to upload anything. And then we've had to follow up with web form after web form, asking them to please open up a spot to upload it. But I don't know. Do you have any suggestions for Harpreet? He says other than web form, but of course that's how we would instruct people to do it. Any other thoughts on that for Harpreet?
I mean, maybe Harpreet, make sure that your application is properly linked, right? If it's a PNP application and it hasn't caught up to the fact that you actually are linked into the system yet, maybe you can try linking your account, but if there's no space to upload, you're stuck. The only way to communicate with immigration right now is basically by web form. So do make sure to send the web form. Make sure to keep a copy of the fact that you've sent the web form, the screenshots, the text of what you uploaded, and a copy of the document. So you can prove to immigration later, hey, you told me to upload it via GC key. There's no upload spot. So take a screenshot of that also and say that you did it by web form on such and such date. So it is super frustrating. I've seen cases too where it asks you for 2 documents, but it gives you multiple document slots for the one document, not for the other one. So,
Yeah. All right. Okay. Next question. This one is from Harsh. And Harsh says, hi, Mark and Alicia. Does the work experience gained during a scheduled break on the study permit when I'm not taking any courses count towards points in the Canadian experience class?
so Harsh, there's a whole little interpretive guideline on, what sort of work experience you can count and what you can't. But it depends if you finished your course of studies or not. If you finished your courses, then you can start to accumulate work experience. But if you have not completed your courses, if you are still on a full-time study permit and you haven't actually applied for your postgrad work permit and have submitted that and it's actually a complete application, then you cannot use in Canada work experience towards Canadian experience unless you've actually completed your program of studies. So make sure that you've completed your program of studies and have properly applied for your postgrad work permit, assuming that you are PGWP eligible within that proper window of time, and then you can start counting that full-time work experience only from the day that you've submitted that complete PGWP application.
All right. Next question is from Kellyanne. She says, I have a question for study permit applications. If you've paid your tuition fees in full, is it still mandatory to include it under proof of funds for your stay in the IMM 1294 form?
Yeah, so Killian, this is something that I talk with my study permit clients about often to make sure that you're proving that you have the full amount for that tuition. I think you said you were from Trinidad and Tobago, and it depends also if, so Trinidad and Tobago is on the student direct stream. And so I'm not sure if you're doing a student direct stream application or if you're doing a regular study permit application. So that can influence the answer as well. So if you are doing student direct stream, then you need to make sure that you have paid your tuition in full. That's a mandatory aspect of SDS. And you still have to do that GIC, the $10,000 Canadian equivalent GIC, and then still prove that you have enough money to meet your living requirements plus any dependents that might be coming with you. So it does depend if you're doing SDS or not SDS. Generally, you want to show that you have paid that full first year tuition, plus that you have enough of a minimum settlement fund amount. So $10,000 GIC, and then if you have additional dependents, then the ballpark rule of thumb is about $4,000 additional per dependent. But it is really specific, right? If you've got loans and if you've got debt, if you've got other things that kind of affect your financial ability, then that's something that you're really going to carefully want to talk about in your letter of explanation. And what I do with clients is we actually have a long template student kind of letter of explanation, and it also has a budget in there. And so I recommend that people put a very detailed budget about how they're going to make financial ends meet and still be able to complete this program of studies.
All right, I'm just going to pull this one up, Alicia. This is from Anch, and I'm not sure if this is the same person who had responded on the LinkedIn page. And this is an important distinction. And this is always the challenge with giving information through the live streams when you don't have the ability to explain all of the variations. But it says, very helpful, Mark. In the last recent video, you said Express Entry has no specific requirements for matching education, but the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program does. I'm going through the SIMP through Express Entry, business 0621 NOC computer STD. So ultimately, you're right. And what we're looking at is the eligibility requirements under the Federal Economic Programs, CEC, and the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So those do not, and they specifically exclude that. But when it comes to the provinces, yes, they have their own pathways, and no way do I want to confuse the two. And I probably should have provided a little bit of a caveat there with it. But yeah, when you're applying through the provinces, they can make up any rules they want to. They're not creatures of legislation, they're creatures of policy. So they can make any changes they want in how they, calculate. And in fairness, I guess if you look at the rationale for it, the provinces are focused on people coming in and filling positions in those NOCs in that province now. Like when you can, when you land, you're filling a labor shortage. Whereas for the purposes of express entry, it's more general. That's why we have doctors and other professionals that may never practice as doctors, but they're awarded points because they're skilled workers with a skill level A NOC. And so, yeah, that's very good. I appreciate you pointing that out. All right. We've got a long time listener, follower, graduate of the Express Entry. George says, it's been a long while. I miss your videos. Hope you still remember me. Of course we do, George. It's fantastic. I love when people come after they have come and George is he's an alumnus. He's an alumni of the Express Entry course and masterclass. And I will never forget you, George. You are one of those one of my favorite students that have come through there. Mm-hmm. So good to see you. Okay. Yeah, I need some good vibes today. It's been pretty crappy this morning, I'll be honest. Okay, I'm still kicking myself. I can't believe I didn't see that email. All right, moving on. Sebastian here, he says, I got paid a bonus on top of my regular salary on my primary occupation. Should I add the bonus on top of my annual salary in the letter, or is it enough with it being mentioned in the contract?
Mm-hmm. So they do say that they want to know about your wage plus benefits. And so if a bonus is a benefit, then for sure include that in your documentation. And the other reason that you'd probably want to include everything, so have some sort of reference to it in your letter itself. So there you go, a reference letter from your employer, should be on official letterhead, include all these things, should indicate the position held, must include the following details. Job status, dates worked, number of hours, and it says annual salary plus benefits.
Yeah.
So that's that very last line there. So the reason that you do want to include that information directly in your record of employment, so the letter from your employer, is that it's going to probably correlate with your tax information, and it's probably going to correlate with your pay stubs, and it should correlate also with the money that's coming into your account. So we always recommend that people provide all this information. So not only the letter from the employer, but tax documentation, if you have it, that summarize your yearly amount from that employer, a couple pay stubs showing that you were actually paid that amount from your employer. And then occasionally, if people can't get their pay stubs or somehow immigration wants to know that that actually came to your account, something showing that that bank account was actually credited with the amount that the employer is saying was paid to you. So yeah, it should be hopefully, it may not be mentioned in the initial contract if the company didn't contemplate that they would pay you a bonus, but hopefully it's mentioned in the letter where they confirm that that was what they did in fact pay you.
All right, next one. This is from Ibrahim, and he says, God bless you guys. I just got my first interview call. Please, what is next? Okay, this is an interesting thing, you guys. Interviews are not a good thing. So I also received an email. Alicia, this is the frustrating part. This is the irony of this discussion. It just came to me. Yesterday, I received an email. I was CC'd on it for, once again, a client that I had worked with a long time ago. And I don't know what IRCC is doing with their current practices. But anyways, once again, I wasn't representing through the whole application, but it was a spousal sponsorship visa office interview. And I was freaking out because ultimately, clearly the only time they ask people to come in for interviews, at least for Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, is generally when they've got issues or questions about the application itself. And so this is, if it's an actual interview, then that's not necessarily a good thing, Ibrahim. And it's something you want to be very careful with. And that's what I then spent probably a good hour trying to track down the client who works up in the oil patch to make sure that they got the email, because there was a scheduled date for the interview and he finally confirmed today. But, this is a scary thing.
Yeah, Ibrahim, we'd recommend that you book a consultation because we don't know what kind of application you submitted, anything about the application. But if they're asking for an interview, it normally means that they have concerns about the application.
All right. Okay, let's take a look. The next one, this is Abdul. He says, hey, Mark, how are you? I have a question for you. Without IELTS, is Canadian immigration possible?
Well, that's a good question. So if you look at the minimum eligibility requirements for how you come into express entry, you definitely do need to have a language test. And it doesn't have to be IELTS. It could be the CELPIP, CELPIP, or if you don't speak English, it could be the TEF or the TCF. So there are some particular French language tests that are accepted and Canadian language tests that are accepted. The Canadian one, other than IELTS, is the CELPIP. Those are required to be able to create an express entry profile. So you have to have a valid language test and you have to have at least above CLB 7 if you're doing federal skilled worker. For certain types of jobs under CEC, it can be CLB 5 for some of them. But generally, for express entry, you have to have the language test. For some other particular provincial nominee programs, for some specific cases, sponsorships, for example, you don't have to have language test results. But in general, it's something that makes immigration much more widely available or possible for most people. So it is one of those things that's usually required.
Yeah, sponsorship for sure. If it's a family class kind of sponsorship, then language is not a requirement. But I'll be honest, I don't know of any provincial nominee program across the country, because in their negotiations with those agreements, that was one of the requirements that IRCC really pushed on the provinces, is that that there was some form of language component, because for a while the Alberta PNP, which then became the Immigrant Nominee Program, which then became the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program. They didn't. There was a period of time where they didn't require language tests, but now even for most of the provinces, and maybe there's an exception out there, but generally, yeah, that's the case. Okay, Sebastian's got this question. He says, "Hi, Mark and Alicia. I've done my paid co-op C level, and I'm assuming that's skill level C, and a year of experience on a B level job with the same employer. Should my letter mention both positions, and should I add related documents for this?" This is a great one. I'm going to flip right back here again.
So keep in mind that, yes, if you have multiple positions, then you want to list those in your letter of employment, but you can only claim points for NOC A, B, or O. So you've got to make sure that you're not claiming any period of employment. So either for federal skilled worker, for foreign work experience, or for Canadian work experience inside Canada, you can only claim work experience that's that high skill level. So under the current system, it's 0, which is managerial level normally, or A or B. And then under the new tier system, it's going to be the higher tiers. So yes, you should mention both positions. You don't need to add all the documentation for the NOC C level positions if you're not relying on it for points, but you do need to note that that's what you did with your time in your personal history.
Yeah. And sometimes, Alicia, sometimes people will then choose not to include that separate occupation in their work history, in their profile, or in their EAPR. And, there's a number of ways of doing this. Obviously, when it's a position with the same company and you're going to be including a reference letter anyways, there's no harm in including it, even though it's not eligible in the work history. Ultimately, when you indicate any work history within the section, any individual entry, it's going to trigger the need to upload a reference letter. So, the reference letter will, the instructions stipulate here, should include all positions held. But there's I've had people that have chosen to not include it in the work history section, but then in a letter of explanation explain, please note I didn't put it in there because I'm not getting points for it. And then I've had others that have included it and then just had the letter encompass both positions and then update them, upload it twice into both sections on the APR document checklist. So number of ways to deal with that, and neither of them are wrong necessarily.
Yeah.
Okay, Solomon says, my NOC is 2263 for the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program, expression of interest, and having a relevant certifications, diploma, etc., with 8+ years of experience, although my post-secondary education is not related to my NOC. Is that an issue? So we got a lot of pieces here, and I'm going to just preempt this, and I'm going to hit this one, Solomon, because and like something that's got this level of detail, particularly about you, we would need a whole lot more information. And it's something, especially in light of even what's happened this morning to me, I really don't want to give instructions and advice to someone about their unique circumstances and then not have information that we need. So, I don't know if you have any general information or anything that you can share for Solomon here, Alicia, but this is definitely
I
something
mean,
that I'd recommend he slides over and,
yeah.
and goes over to her site and clicks on speak to a lawyer right here, and then books a consult with one of us here. So
Yeah. Yeah, book a consult. We want to make sure that we're understanding your whole circumstances here. If you have post-secondary education that's unrelated to the NOC, sometimes you can explain that in letters of explanation. You can talk about career trajectories and what you did as another form of education or other certifications or on-the-job experience that you gained in order to be qualified for that position. It really does depend on your life circumstances, though, and the requirements for the program. So we'd want to talk with you directly.
yeah, absolutely. Especially given the fact this is PNP directed to the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program. Okay, Max says, I graduated in 2019 and was eligible for a 3-year postgrad. However, the postgrad was issued until July 2021 due to early passport expiry. Okay. My first postgrad remark said it can be extended until November of 2022. Oh, he's got multiple pieces here. Let's see if I have them. Okay, he says, I extended my postgrad using the first public policy and got a case 20 open work permit valid until December 2022. Will I still be eligible to use the current public policy to extend it again with a letter, Max, of explanation? Which lawyer, now you're on track, Max, thank you. Which
Book a
lawyer
consult,
you would
Max.
suggest on your website for me to book consultation with on this area? Thanks. You're going to go right here for this one, and you're going to click on Alicia right here. You're going to click on 25-minute consult and choose Monday as the date for your consult and slide in, and she's got availability there in the afternoon. That's what I recommend you do specifically.
Yeah, Max, it's really hard if you had a recapture of time, but then instead of doing the recapture of time, you actually did the public policy. Technically, immigration in general is not supposed to give a second open 18-month if you've already benefited from the first public policy, but it's possible that maybe they gave you the recapture of time rather than the full 18 months, but we would really need to drill down and take a look at the documents, each of those work permits, and hopefully you have a copy of those letters from immigration when they were sending stuff back and forth, and a copy of what you submitted in your PGWP applications themselves.
Sebastian says, thanks. Often I don't pull these up, but thanks, Sebastian. I need a little bit of love today. Today's a real crappy day for me. Okay. All right. Next comment is from Kanjun, and he says, hi, Mark and Alicia. Under NOC 2171, the main duties, it has different duties for each job title. Does it mean the applicant only needs to fit one of those duties instead of all job duties, all job titles duties? So why don't we pull this up, Alicia? See if it lets us pull this up in 2171. And I'm going to just show people where I'm going here. So I'm just going to the NOC 2016 version here. And then we're just going to search by NOC code, and we're going to type in 2171, and hopefully it will cooperate with us, which is Information System Analysts and Consultants. So when we pull this up, and some NOCs are like this, right? So
yeah. And so this is one where actually I have a client right now who's hired me to help them in detail review their express entry. They got an ITA, they want to make sure they're doing it right. And so if you take a look under the current NOC codes, and it's interesting, Mark, because this is one of the ones that's going to be bifurcated. It's going to switch with the new tier system. So they've actually subdivided this into totally different numbers. But what it is right now, and this is confusing for a lot of people on NOCs that have a number of different subtitles within that NOC. So if you look at 2171, you've got IT systems, business analysts, and consultants. Then you've got systems security analysts. Then you've got information systems quality assurance analysts. And then you have systems auditors. So you have a whole bunch of different types of subcategories in 2171. And To be fair, you should hopefully only have to meet the lead statement. So if you go up to the very top of the page, it'll be kind of this overarching, what kind of information systems analyst or consultant are you, right? What kind of analysis are you doing that fits within these parameters as these actions? What kind of company are you employed by and what kind of clients do you have? But then you look down, and if you are in particular an analyst, then you'll be looking at the analyst and consultants' main duties. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. So you should be making sure that you're doing hopefully, at least 3 of the 4, hopefully more than 3 of the 4. But some of those only have one bullet point, right? So technically you need to do the one bullet point, the systems auditors, for example, or the information quality assurance analysts. So they are going to change this in the new tier system to make it clear that it's going to be a different number for each of these subcategories. But right now, figure out which of the subcategories you most closely align with and make sure you're doing the majority of the main duties in that subcategory as well as meeting the lead statement.
Yeah, exactly. So in short, no, you don't need to demonstrate that you've performed all of the duties in all 4 of those. You're going to pick the one that best fits as well as the lead statement. And that's what you're going to run with. All right. Okay. Ma says here, hi, Mark and Alicia, I'm doing my postdoc, but I do not perform most duties under the NOC for postdoc. Oh yeah. These are the common ones we see so frequently. What's your suggestion? Should I choose the code based on my subject area, i.e. chemist?
Yeah. So Ma, I've worked with I've worked with a few people who are PhDs, postdocs, who are in really specialized fields, and this really requires a consultation because I need to ask you particularly what kind of work you are doing, what kind of research, what are your actual job duties? Um, are you getting paid on a full-time basis throughout the year, or is this broken down into seasonal work and it doesn't qualify at all? Because sometimes if you're doing postdoc researchers, sometimes you only get paid for part of the year and you're not paid during the summer, and that can be a big problem in terms of proving continuous employment to meet the minimum requirements for eligibility for express entry. So there's a number of moving parts here, and it really does depend on whether you can show that you're meeting the mandatory main duties, not the ones that say may.
Yep.
And if you are doing something that's more particular, like chemistry or chemist-related work in very specific terms, then maybe you look at other sorts of NOC categories to see if that job better fits within a different NOC.
Yeah. And this is one of the things when it comes to the consultations, that's where we can actually drill down with you. Because I've had a lot of people who say, look, the letter I've got from my employer, it doesn't have all these duties in it. Or sometimes actually in those discussions that I've had, Alicia, with people, I've been able to say, okay, well, at some point in time, in the time that you've been working for this institution, did you do some of these? Maybe you didn't do it regularly all the time. Well, as far as I'm concerned, if you've hit on these duties at some point during the time in which you've worked for that company, even if it's not something you do every day, then I'm interested in continuing forward with that. So, and seeing if maybe we can work with the employer to make sure that the reference letter more accurately reflects. So that's something that we definitely, we do in one of those, right? So that's why the consultations are so important. Okay, well, I can't believe the time has already gone. It's just flown by. And I know we didn't get to everybody's questions. However, I want to point it out, all of you folks here that are tuned in on the YouTube channel, right here, you'll see submit your question for the next live Q&A. When you click on here, if you didn't get your question asked now, and if it's a question, yes, I want to leave YouTube. If it's a question that is of general kind of importance and we feel like it would be one that we could use for the feature question, then we pull it out from here. Now, the reason we don't have the poll going today, so you see there isn't a live poll going today, is because Igor is preparing for some law school exams. So he wasn't able to do that for us today. But those of you who are, going through this process and didn't get your question answered today, you can also submit it here for the question for next week. Okay. So that you can just follow that link right in the description. And as I indicated before, a couple little quick announcements. One of them is the simple fact that on Monday, that's when the express entry starts. So if there's some that have been jumping in a little bit late, just a reminder that the step-by-step course, the masterclass component, starts September the 19th to the 22nd. And once again, all you have to do is just go down to the link right here and click on the express entry masterclass, and it will take you to the link where you can subscribe. Now, I also want to point out in the description that we also have the spousal sponsorship course. So when you click on that link, it will take you right here. And in October, the 17th through the 22nd, we're doing our next spousal sponsorship. And I can tell you guys that with the way things are going, it's far, far better if you just subscribe early so that you can start going through all those videos. And then when the time comes for the masterclass, you have all your questions queued up. Finally, the final piece, and we don't talk probably enough about this, is that within our firm, generally, we represent you guys. And it all starts with a consult. And then we use, and if you click up here on our website, our approach, it talks about our collaborative review. So remember, you guys, that we are a law firm. Alicia and I love to work with you. And you can see all of the reasons and the rationales for why we do what we do here, a full explanation. And just fortunately, go over to our Holthe Law, just search for holthelaw.com and read the reviews and see what people have to say. Although the one this morning probably, although it's not collaborative review, I'm pretty sure they're not giving me, 5 stars. Anyways, all right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to the channel, share it with those that you are familiar with, that you think would also benefit from it. And we'll see you again on Wednesday. Also, I want you to watch for a number of other videos that we're going to be releasing that are recorded videos on our YouTube channel. We have a number that we have released that are going to get pushed out. And Igor's, like I said, he's just working on a few things. And so if you watch the channel here, you will see that there are specific ones that focus directly on some very, very specific topics. And Chanel, there's 4 that we're going to be releasing right away here. And you'll see that those are going to be popping up right here in the feed on the YouTube channel and across all of our social channels.
And last thing, hopefully we will hear from the minister about their new program for transitioning, especially students and people who have Canadian work experience, to some sort of permanent residency. Maybe it's tweaking the express entry program. Maybe it's a whole new program. We're supposed to hear about that supposedly next week. So we will see.
We'll see September 20th. That's theoretically the range where they're looking at. So we'll see. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you later.